Hello and welcome to India Reads. We are reading the story of my experiments with truth by Gandhi. We've reached the stage where Gandhi talks about his month with Gokhale, and now we're starting off with a chapter where he talks about a month with Gokhale, part 2. Let's get rolling. Whilst living under Gokhale's roof, I was far from being a stay at home. I told my Christian friends in South Africa that in India I would meet Christian Indians and acquaint myself with their condition. I had heard of Babu Kalicharan Banerjee and held him in high regard. He took a prominent part in the Congress, and I had none of the misgivings about him that I had about average Christian Indian, who stood aloof from the Congress and isolated himself from Hindus and Muslims. I told Gokhale that I was thinking of meeting him. He said, "What is good of your seeing him? He is a very good man, but I am afraid he will not satisfy you. I know him very well. However, you can certainly meet if you like." I sought an appointment which he readily gave. When I went, I found that his wife was on her deathbed. His house was simple. In the Congress, I had seen him in coat and trousers, but I was glad to find him now wearing a Bengal dhoti and shirt. I liked his simple mode of dress, though I myself then wore a Parsi coat and trousers. Without much ado, I presented my difficulties to him, and he asked, "Do you believe in the doctrine of the original sin?" "I do," said I. "Well, then Hinduism offers no absolution therefrom. Christianity does," and added that the wages of sin is death, and the Bible says that the only way of deliverance is surrender unto Jesus. I put forth Bhakti Marga, the part of devotion of the Bhagavad Gita, but to no avail. I thanked him for his goodness. He failed to satisfy me, but I benefited by the interview. During these days, I walked up and down the streets of Calcutta. I went to most places by foot. I met Justice Mittar and Sir Gurdas Banerjee, whose help I wanted in my work in South Africa. About this time, I met Raja Sir Priya Mohan Mukherjee. Kalicharan Banerjee had spoken to me about the Kali temple, which I was eager to see, especially as I had read about it in books. So I went there one day. Justice Mittar's house was in the same locality, and I therefore went to the temple on the same day that I visited him. On the day, I saw a stream of sheep going to be sacrificed to Kali. Rows of beggars lined the lane leading to the temple. There were religious mendicants too, and even in those days, I was sternly opposed to giving alms to sturdy beggars. A crowd of them pursued me. One of them was found seated on a veranda. He stopped me and he accosted me. "Whither are you going, my boy?" I replied to him. He asked my companion and asked me to sit down, which we did. I asked him, "Do you regard this sacrifice as religion?" "Who would regard killing of animals as religion?" "Then why don't you preach against it?" "That's not my business. Our business is to worship God." "But could you not find any other place in which to worship God?" "All other places are equally good for us. The people are like a flock of sheep, following wherever leaders lead them. It is no business of us sadhus." We did not prolong the discussion but passed on to the temple. We were greeted by rivers of blood. I could not bear to stand it. I was exasperated and restless. I have never forgotten that sight. That very evening, I had an invitation to dinner at a party of Bengali friends. There I spoke to a friend about this cruel form of worship. He said, "The sheep don't feel anything. The noise and the drum beating there deaden all sensation of pain." I could not swallow this. I told him that if the sheep had speech, they would tell a different tale. I felt that the cruel custom ought to be stopped. I thought of the story of Buddha, but I also saw that the task was beyond my capacity. I hold today the same opinion that I held then. To my mind, the life of a lamb is no less precious than that of a human being. I should be unwilling to take the life of a lamb for the sake of a human body. I hold that the more helpless a creature, the more entitled it is to protection by man from the cruelty of man. But he who has not qualified himself for such a service is unable to afford it any protection. I must go through more self-purification and sacrifice, and therefore I can hope to save these lambs from this unholy sacrifice. It is my constant prayer that there may be born on earth some great spirit, man or woman, fired with divine pity, who will deliver us from this heinous sin, save the lives of the innocent creatures, and purify the temple. How is it that Bengal, with all its knowledge, intelligence, sacrifice, and emotion, tolerates the slaughter? A month with Gokhale, Part 3. The terrible sacrifice offered to Kali in the name of religion enhanced my desire to know Bengali life. I had read and heard a lot about Brahmo Samaj. I knew something about the life of Pratap Chandra Majumdar. I had attended some of the meetings addressed by him. I secured his life of Keshav Chandra, read it with great interest, and understood the distinction between Sadharan Brahmo Samaj and Adi Brahmo Samaj. I met Pandit Shimnath Shastri and in the company of Professor Katwate went to see Maharishi Devendranath Tagore. But as no interviews with him were allowed, then we could not see him. We were, however, invited to a celebration of Brahmo Samaj held at his place, where we had the privilege of listening to fine Bengali music. Ever since, I have been a lover of Bengali music. Having seen enough of Brahmo Samaj, it was impossible to be satisfied without seeing Swami Vivekananda. So, with great enthusiasm, I went to Belur Mutt, mostly or maybe all the way on foot. I loved the sequestered sight of the mutt. I was disappointed and sorry to be told that Swami was at his Calcutta house lying ill and could not be seen. I then ascertained the place of the residence of Sister Nivedita and met her in a Chaurangi mansion. I was taken aback by the splendor that surrounded her, and even in our conversation, there was not much meeting ground. I spoke to Gokhale about this, and he said that he did not wonder there could be no point of contact between me and a volatile person like her. I met her again at Pestunji Padshah's place. I happened to come in just as she was talking to his old mother, and so I became an interpreter between the two. In spite of my failure to find an agreement with her, I could not but notice and admire her overflowing love for Hinduism. I came to know of her books later. I used to divide my day between seeing the leading people in Calcutta and regarding their work in South Africa and visiting and studying the religious and public institutions of the city. I once addressed a meeting presided over by Dr. Malik on the work of Indian Ambulance Corps in the Boer War. My acquaintance with the Englishman stood me in good stead on this occasion too. Mr. Saunders was ill then, but he rendered me as much help as in 1896. Gokhale liked the speech of mine and he was glad to hear Dr. Ray praising it. Thus my stay under the roof of Gokhale made my work in Calcutta very easy. It brought me into touch with the foremost Bengali families and was the beginning of my intimate contact with Bengal. I must needs skip over many a reminiscence of this memorable month. I don't know how the English is. Let me simply mention my flying visit to Burma and the Fungis there. I was pained by their lethargy. I saw the golden pagoda. I did not like the innumerable little candles burning in the temple and the rats running about the sanctum brought to my mind the thoughts of Dayanand's experience at Morvi. The freedom and energy of the Burmese women charmed just as the indolence of the men pained me. I also saw during my brief sojourn that just as in Bombay was not India, Rangoon was not Burma, and that just as we in India have become commission agents of English merchants, so in Burma we have combined with the English merchants in making the Burmese people our commission agents. On my return from Burma, I took leave of Gokhale. The separation was a wrench, but my work in Bengal, or rather Calcutta, was finished and I had no occasion to stay any longer. Before settling down, I had thought of making a tour through India, traveling third class and acquainting myself with the hardships of the third class passengers. I spoke to Gokhale about this. To begin with, he ridiculed the idea, but when I explained to him what I had hoped for, he cheerfully approved. I had planned to go first to Benaras, pay my respects to Mrs. Besant, who was then ill. It was necessary to equip myself anew for the third class tour. Gokhale himself gave me a metal tiffin box and got it filled with sweet balls and puris. I purchased a canvas bag worth 12 annas and a long coat made of chaya wool. The bag was to contain this coat, a dhoti, a towel and a shirt. I had a blanket as well to cover myself and a water jug. Thus equipped, I set forth on my travels. Gokhale and Mr. Ray came to the station to see me off. I had asked them both not to trouble to come, but they insisted. I should not have come if you had gone first class, but now I had to, said Gokhale. No one stopped Gokhale from going on the platform. He was in his silk turban, jacket and dhoti. Dr. Ray was in his Bengali dress. He was stopped by the ticket collector, but on Gokhale telling him that he was his friend, he was admitted. Thus, with their good wishes, I started on my journey. 20 in Benaras. The journey was from Calcutta to Rajkot, and I planned to halt at Benaras, Agra, Jaipur, and Palampur on road. I had not the time to see any more places than these. In each city, I stayed one day and put up at dharmashalas or with pandas like ordinary pilgrims, excepting at Palampur. So far as I can remember, I did not spend more than rupees 31 including the train fare on this journey. In traveling third class, I mostly preferred the ordinary to the mail trains as I knew that the later was more crowded and the fares in them higher. The third class compartments are particularly as dirty and the closet arrangements as bad today as they were then. There may be a little improvement now, but the difference between the facilities provided for the first and the third class is out of all proportion to the differences between the fares of for the two classes. Third class passengers are treated like sheep and their comfort are sheep's comfort. In Europe, I travelled third and only once first just to see what it was like, but there I noticed no such difference between the first and third classes. In South Africa, third class passengers are mostly Negroes. Third class compartments are provided with sleeping accommodation and cushioned seats. The accommodation is also regulated so as to prevent overcrowding, whereas I have found the regulation limit usually exceeded. The indifference of the railway authorities to the comfort of the third class passengers combined with the dirty and inconsiderable habits of the passengers themselves make third class travel a trial for passengers of cleanly ways. These unpleasant habits commonly include throwing of rubbish on the floor of the compartment, smoking at all hours and in all places, betel and tobacco chewing, converting of the whole carriage into a spitting, shouting and yelling, and using foul language regardless of the convenience or comfort of fellow passengers. I have noticed little difference between my experience of the third class traveling in 1902 and that of my unbroken third class tours between 1950 and 1919. I can think of only one remedy for this awful state of things, that educated men should make a point of traveling third class and reforming the habits of the people, as also of never letting the railway authorities rest in peace, sending in complaints whenever necessary, never resorting to bribes or any unlawful means to obtaining their own comforts, and never putting up with the infringements of rules on the part of anyone concerned. This, I am sure, would bring about considerable improvement. My serious illness in 1918 and 19 has unfortunately compelled me to practically give up third class travelling, and it has been a matter of constant pain and shame for me, especially because the disability came at a time when the agitation for removal of the hardship of the third class passengers was making a fair headway. The hardships of the poor railway and steamship passengers, accentuated by their bad habits, the undue facilities allowed by the government to foreign trade and other things, make an important group of subjects worthy to be taken up, one or two enterprising workers who could devote their full time to it. But I shall leave the third class passengers at that and come to my experience in Benares. I arrived there in the morning. I had decided to put up with a panda. Numerous Brahmins surrounded me as soon as I got out of the train, and I selected one who struck me to be comparatively clearer and better than the rest. It proved to be a good choice. There was a cow in the courtyard of his house and an upper story where I was given a lodging. I did not want to have any food without ablution in the Ganges in the proper orthodox manner. The panda made preparations for it. I had told him beforehand that at no account could I give him more than a rupee and 4 annas as dakshina, and that he should therefore keep in mind while making the preparations. The panda readily assented. Be the pilgrim rich or poor, said he, the service is the same in every case, but the amount of dakshina we receive depends upon the will and the ability of the pilgrim. I did not find that the panda at all abridged the usual formalities in my case. The puja was over at 12 o'clock and I went to Kashi Vishwanath temple for darshan. I was deeply pained by what I saw there. While practicing as a barrister in Bombay in 1891, I had occasion to attend a lecture on pilgrimage of Kashi in the Pratna Samaj Hall. I was therefore prepared for some measure of disappointment, but the actual disappointment was greater than what I had bargained for. The approach was through a narrow and slippery lane. Quiet there was none. The swarming flies and the noise made by the shopkeepers and the pilgrims were perfectly insufferable. When one expected an atmosphere of meditation and communion, it was conspicuous by its absence. One had to seek that atmosphere in oneself. I did observe devout sisters who were absorbed in meditation, entirely unconscious of the environment. But for the but for this, the authorities of the temple could scarcely claim any credit. The authorities should be responsible for creating and maintaining about the temple a pure, sweet, and serene atmosphere, physical as well as moral. Instead of this, I found a bazaar where cunning shopkeepers were selling sweets and toys of the latest fashion. When I reached the temple, I was greeted at the entrance by a stinking mass of rotten flowers. The floor was paved with fine marble, which was, however, broken by some devotee innocent of the aesthetic days, who had set it with rupees serving as an excellent recept, receptacle for dirt. I went near the Vapi, well of knowledge. I searched here for God but failed to find him. I was therefore not in a particularly good mood. The surroundings of the Vapi too I found to be dirty. I had no mind to give any dakshina, so I offered a pie. The panda in charge got angry and threw away the pie. He swore at me and said, "This insult will take you straight to hell." This did not perturb me. "Maharaj," said I, "whatever faith has in store for me, it does not behave one of your class to indulge in such language. You may take this pie if you like, or you will lose that too." "Go away," he replied. "I do not care for your pie." And then followed a further volley of abuse. I took up the pie and went my way, flattering myself that the Brahmin had lost a pie and I had saved one. But the Maharaj was hardly a man to let his pie go. He called me back and said, "All right, leave the pie here. I would rather not be as you are. If I refuse the pie, it will be bad for you." I silently gave him back the pie and with a sigh went away. Since then, I have been twice to Kashi Vishwanath, but that has been after I had been afflicted with the title of Mahatma. An experience such as I have detailed above had become impossible. People eager to have my darshan would not permit me to have a darshan of the temple. The woes of the Mahatmas are known to Mahatmas only alone, otherwise the dirt and the noise were same as before. If anyone doubts the infinite mercy of God, let him have a look at these sacred places. How much hypocrisy and irreligion does a prince of yogis suffer to be perpetuated in his holy name? He proclaimed long ago, "Whatever a man sows, that he shall reap." The law of karma is inexorable and impossible of evasion. There is thus hardly any need for God to interfere. He laid down the law and, as it were, retired. After this visit to the temple, I waited upon Mrs. Besant. I knew that once she had recovered from an illness, I sent in my name. She came at once. As I wished only to pay my respects to her, I said, "I'm aware that you are in delicate health. I only wanted to pay my respects. I'm thankful that you have been good enough to receive me in spite of indifferent health. I will not detain you any longer." So saying, I took leave of her. Settled in Bombay. Gokhale was very anxious that I should settle down in Bombay, practice at the bar, and help him in his public work. Public work in those days meant Congress work, and the chief work of the institution which he had assisted to found was carrying on the Congress administration. I liked Gokhale's advice, but I was not overconfident of success as a barrister. The unpleasant memories of past failure were yet with me, and I still hated as poison the use of flattery for getting briefs. I therefore decided to start work first at Rajkot. Kevalram Marvi, the way my old well-wisher who had induced me to go to England, was there, and he started me straight away with 3 briefs. 2 of them were appeals before the judicial assistant to the political agent in Kathiawad, and one was an original case in Jamnagar. The last was rather important. On my saying that I could not trust myself to do justice, Kevalram Dave exclaimed, "Winning or losing is no concern of yours. You will simply do your best, and I am of course there to assist you." The counsel on the other side was the late Sergeant Samar. I was fairly well prepared, not that I knew much of Indian law, but Kevalram Dave had instructed me thoroughly. I had heard friends say before I went out to South Africa that Sir Firoz Shah Mehta had the law of evidence at his fingertips, and that was the secret of his success. I had borne this in mind, and during the voyage had carefully studied the Indian Evidence Act with commentaries thereon. There was, of course, the advantage of my legal experience in South Africa. I won the case and gained some confidence. I had no fear about the appeals, which were successful. All this inspired a hope in me that after all, I might not even fail in Bombay. Before I set forth the circumstances in which I decided to go to Bombay, I shall narrate of my experience in the inconsiderateness and the ignorance of the English officials. The Judicial Assistance Court was peripatetic. He was constantly touring, and the wakils and their clients had to follow him wherever he moved his camp. The wakils would charge more whenever they had to go out of the headquarters, and so the clients had naturally to incur double the expenses. The inconvenience was no convenience for was no concern for the judge. The appeal of which I am talking was to be heard at Yerawal, where plague was raging. I have a recollection there that there were as many as 50 cases daily in the place with a population of 5,500. It was practically deserted, and I put up in a deserted dharmshala at some distance from the town. But where were the clients to stay? If they were poor, they simply had to trust themselves to God's mercy. A friend who also had cases before the court had wired that I should put in an application for the camp to be moved to some other station because of the plague at Yerawal. On my submitting the application, the Sahib asked me, "Are you afraid?" I answered, "It's not a question of my being afraid. I think I can shift for myself, but what about the clients?" "The plague has come to stay in India," replied the Sahib. "Why fear it? The climate of Yerawal is lovely." The Sahib lived far away from the town in a palatial tent pitched on the seashore. Surely people must learn to live thus in the open. It was no use arguing against his philosophy. The Sahib told his Sirashtedar, "Make a note of what Mr. Gandhi says and let me know if it is very inconvenient for wakil or clients." The Sahib, of course, had honestly done what he thought was the right thing, but how could a man have an idea of the hardships of poor India? How was he to understand needs, habits, idiosyncrasies, and customs of the poor? How was one accustomed to measure things in gold sovereigns, all at once to make calculations in tiny bits of copper? As the elephant is powerless to think in the terms of the ant, in spite of the best intentions of the world, even so is the Englishman powerless to think in terms of or legislate for the Indian. But to resume the thread of the story, in spite of my successes, I had been thinking of staying on in Rajkot for some time longer. When one day Kevalram Dave came to me and said, "Gandhi, we will not suffer you to vegetate here. You must settle in Bombay." "But who will find work for me there?" I asked. "Will you find the expenses?" Yes, I will," said he. "We shall bring you down there sometimes as a big barrister from Bombay, and drafting work we shall send you there. It lies with us wakil to make you or mar a barristerate. You have proved your worth in Jamnagar and Yerawal, and I have therefore not the least anxiety about you. You are destined to do public work, and we shall not allow you to be buried in Kathiawad. So tell me, when will you go to Bombay?" "I'm expecting a remittance from Natal. As soon as I get it, I'll go." The money came in about 2 weeks, and I went to Bombay. I took chambers at Payne, Gilbert, and Sayani's offices, and it looked as though I had settled down. Faith on its trial. Though I had hired characters in the chambers in the fort and had a house in Girgaon, God would not let me settle down. Scarcely had I moved to my new house when my second son Manilal, who had already been through an acute attack of smallpox some years back, had a severe attack of typhoid combined with pneumonia and signs of delirium at night. The doctor was called in. He said medicine would have little effect, but eggs and chicken broth might be given with profit. Manilal was only 10 years old. To consult his wishes was out of question. Being his guardian, I had to decide. The doctor was a very good Parsi. I told him that we were all vegetarians and I could not possibly give either of the two things to my son. Would he therefore recommend something else? "Your son's life is in danger," said the good doctor. "We could give him milk diluted with water, but that would not give him nourishment. But as you know, I am called in by many Hindu families and they do not object to anything I prescribe. I think you would be well advised not to be so hard on your son." "What you say is quite right," said I. As a doctor, you could not do otherwise, but my responsibility is very great. If the boy had been grown up, I would have certainly tried to ascertain his wishes and respected them. But here I have to think and decide for him. To my mind, it's only on such occasions that a man's faith is truly tested. Rightly or wrongly, it is part of my religious conviction that a man may not eat meat, eggs, and the like. There should be a limit even to the means of keeping ourselves alive. Even for itself, we may not so not do probably certain things. Religion, as I understand, does not permit me to use meat or eggs for me or mine, even on occasions like this, and I therefore take the risk that you say is likely. But I beg you of one thing, as I cannot avail myself of your treatment, I propose to try some hydropathic remedies which I happen to know. But I shall not know how to examine the boy's pulse, chest, lungs, etc. If you will kindly look in from time to time to examine him and keep me informed of his condition, I shall be grateful to you. The good doctor appreciated my difficulty and agreed to my request. Though Manilal could not have made this his choice, I told him what had passed between the doctor and myself and asked him of his opinion. Do try your hydropathic treatment, he said. I will not have eggs or chicken broth. That made me glad, though I realized that if I had given him either of these, he would have taken it. I knew Kohni's treatment and tried it too. I knew as well that fasting also could be tried with profit, so I began to give Manilal hip baths according to Kohni, but never kept him in the tub for more than 3 minutes and kept him on orange juice mixed with water for 3 days. But the temperature persisted, going up to 104. At night he would be delirious. I began to get anxious. What will people say of me? What would my elder brother think of me? Could we not call in another doctor? Why not have an Ayurvedic physician? What right had the parents to inflict their fads on their children? I was haunted by thoughts like these. Then a contrary current would start. God would surely be pleased to see that I was giving the same treatment to my son as I would give myself. My faith in hydropathy and little faith in allopathy. The doctors could not guarantee recovery. At best, they could experiment. The thread of life was in the hands of God. Why not trust it to Him and His name go on with what I have thought as the right treatment? My mind was torn between these conflicting thoughts. It was night. I was in Manilal's bed, lying by his side. I decided to give him a wet sheet pack. I got up, wetted his sheet, wrung water out of it, and wrapped about Manilal, keeping only his head out, and then covered him with 2 blankets. To the head, I applied a big wet towel. The whole body was burning like a hot iron and quite parched. There was absolutely no perspiration. I was solely tired. I left Manilal in charge of his mother and went out for a walk to Chowpatty to refresh myself. It was about 10 o'clock. Very few pedestrians were out. Plunged in deep thought, I scarcely looked at them. My honor is thy keeping, O Lord, in this hour of trial. I repeated myself. Ramayana was on my lips. After a short time, I returned, my heart beating within my breast. No sooner had I returned to my room, Manilal said, "You have returned, Bapu?" "Yes, darling." "Please pull me out. I am burning." "Are you perspiring, my boy?" "I am simply soaked. Please take me out." I felt his forehead. It was covered with beads of perspiration. The temperature was going down. I thanked God. "Manilal, your fever is sure to go. A little bit more perspiration and then I will take you out." "Pray no, deliver me from this furnace. Wrap me some other time if you like." I just managed to keep him under the pack for a few minutes more by diverting him. The perspiration streamed down his forehead. I undid the pack and dried his body. Father and son fell asleep on the same bed, and each slept like a log. Next morning, Manilal had much less fever. He went on thus for 40 days on diluted milk and fruit juices. I had no fear now. It was an obstinate type of fear, but it had got under control. Today, Manilal is the healthiest of my boys. Who can say whether his recovery was due to God's grace or due to hydrotherapy or to careful dietary nursing? Let everyone decide according to their own faith. For my part, I was sure that God had saved my honor, and the belief remains unaltered to this day. Okay, with this we will take a break, and the next chapter is called South Africa again. That's where we start the next chapter. What do we have to unpack here? There are 2 chapters on about his month with Gokhale. There's chapter 2 and chapter 3. During chapter 2, the most important thing is that Gandhi makes a visit to the Kali temple in Calcutta, and he is very curious. When he goes there, he realizes that it was not such a good idea, because they do sacrifice of sheep and there was blood flowing all over. There were beggars in the temple. It was not a very pleasant sight, and the experience of seeing blood all over is something that has never left his consciousness. To the day of writing the book, he still remembers that, and he remembers it with a little bit of sadness. He also is sad about the condition of the temples and holy places, which are dirty, filthy, and not taken care of. He experiences this further when he goes to Benaras, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So the next chapter uh, is another month with Gokhale, and he realized during that month that he had acquired whatever he wanted out of that place, and Gokhale had suggested that he should be in Bombay, he should practice in the bar in Bombay, and help in all the work, and all the work in Gokhale's case meant Congress work. Gandhi readily agreed to it, and but decided that he would not go straight to Bombay, but he would cover a few cities, cities like Benaras, Agra, Palampur, and I guess Rajkot. Uh, he also decided that he would travel in third class. He had been traveling in first class till now. He had an experience of both first and third class in Europe, and he found them to be very close to each other. But the experience of third class in India completely shocked him. It was dirty, it was filthy, there were no facilities, and he just was not, he struggled through it. They did not provide adequate blankets and covering, which a third class train journey in Europe would provide. And so he had a lot of comparison points, and therefore was able to judge that the third class was not good at all. However, it was his insistence to travel in third class that made him book the ticket. Eventually, after he got sick in the later years of his life, he was forced to travel first class only. This is something that he regrets. He wished that he could travel a lot more in third class, because that would help him in bringing reform to that. Any which ways, a significant portion of his struggle was in putting pressure to the railways to improve the third class, and this is the solution that Gandhi recommends. He feels that as more and more educated people travel in third class, there is an opportunity for the railways to improve their third class. He feels that if people continuously keep writing to the railways, putting pressure on the railways to improve the third class, there is no reason why it will not improve. Then he spends a lot of time talking about his experience in Banaras. Banaras obviously is not a very clean city. He's very upset and pained to see the filth all over. He goes and spends time at Kashi Vishwanath. There is a panda who is like a priest, or how do you call it, a Brahman, and Gandhi instantly realizes that he is not somebody who follows the scriptures anyway very sincerely. The Panda takes him to Kashi Vishwanath temple. Gandhi is shocked to see that the temple is not very well maintained. It's dirty. There are rotten flowers lying on the floor, and there's filth all over. He is quite upset about it. This is one of the first experience of him visiting Kashi. The other experience later, in later part of his life, where he was already called Mahatma, and there were a lot of people surrounding him all the time, so he would not be able to travel as freely as he was at the time uh, when he first went to Banaras. So this is one more point that he covers. He also covers the aspect of uh, reaching Rajkot and building his career. He decided that he would not settle down in Bombay, but try his practice in Rajkot, gain a little experience, gain a lot of confidence, and then go to Bombay. He does experience initial successes in Rajkot. He wins a case, and that case, the victory of the case gives him a lot of confidence, and he feels that if I can do this here, I can definitely do it in Bombay too. Meanwhile, his second son Manilal gets very sick. Now, Gandhi is somebody who never believed in allopathic medicines, but he believed in natural therapy, and therefore, if that was his conviction and belief, he should follow that with his son, is what he felt. But obviously, there's a lot of pressure. He takes the son to the allopathic doctor, and the doctor tells him that the best way that his son can improve his health is by having a broth made of egg and chicken. Now, Gandhi is a staunch vegetarian, and he's any which is against eating meat. So, unfortunately, Manilal is also too young, so he cannot ask him for his opinion. He's only 10 years old. So, Gandhi decides on his own that he would not give Manilal eggs and chicken broth, but he feels that when somebody takes an important decision, or somebody decides to accept a certain lifestyle, uh, challenges like these are the ones uh, which determine how staunchly he follows it. So Gandhi uses this as an opportunity. Eventually, he does speak to Manilal about it, and Manilal says that no, I will not have chicken in any which ways. Let's try the hydrotherapy that you are suggesting, and I'm sure it will work. So, Gandhi decides to do that. However, Manila's fever keeps on increasing, and Gandhi starts getting worried. He covers himself with completely with blankets, and starts applying wet cloth over his face. Over So one evening he does this and lies next to him, and he sees that Manilal is boiling. He's very worried. He prays to God, and he continues his therapy. And then he realizes Manila has started perspiring, which is a good sign, which means that his fever is leaving him. He thanks God, and he feels that it is. He asks himself, what is that which has treated Manilal? Is it his fasting, or is it his hydropathy medication, or it is Gandhi's faith in God? He eventually pins it down to Gandhi's faith in God. He feels that God has helped him in uh, getting Manila's fever down. Right? And so after this experience and incident, he decides to go to Bombay. Now he has already built a success in Rajkot, so that has given him confidence. So he goes and he registers himself at the Bombay bar, and also gets a house for himself in Girgaon, which is closer to his place of work, and slowly settles down. Yeah, and that's where I think we will leave the chapter. I will continue from here in the next chapter, and thank you very much. Do drop in your comments, and I will see you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.